Welcome back to another episode of A Girl in a Blanket, a podcast where I talk about what it's like being adopted and interviewing other families or people who have been adopted. On today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about how my parenting has been affected with the fact that I'm adopted. And some people might say like, hey, parenting should not be affected if you are adopted. You should just be like a regular schmigular parent. However, I would like to disagree because I feel like parenting is a little more tough because I'm always comparing myself to my mom, and I feel like it has made it really difficult because sometimes I'm like, am I being like my mom in this situation or am I being myself? And it has made it a little difficult in certain situations, like angry outbursts or being hit or kicked, and it's just been really hard to deal with it. So let's deep dive into it and I'll discuss it with you guys. My husband says that I should clarify whether it was my birth mom or my adoptive mom. I'm talking about my birth mom. Hopefully you guys got the gist of it. If not, just in case, have you pointed out. I have been a mom now for about 3.5, almost 4 years, which is absolutely insane to me. But my son is almost 4, and parenting has been a roller coaster. There's really good times and there's lots of bad times, but there's also more good times than there are bad times. And as my therapist on my mission said, focus more on the good, because the good will always outweigh the bad. And I love that. And I try to focus my whole life like that. So then I make sure to remind myself the good is better than the bad. So, but I do find myself in situations where my birth mom, she never played with me. I don't even remember her really talking to me because I don't think she was actually there with me. And then also like handling emotions. I was never really taught how to handle my emotions in the sense of like outbursts and stuff like that. It's terrible. Okay, sorry guys, we're having a lot of camera malfunctions. As you guys have noticed, that the Girl in a Blanket podcast is currently on the move because I was supposed to record an episode for you guys a couple weeks ago, but things have just been absolutely insane. So let's continue on with this. I apologize for all the distractions. Anyways, sometimes I am fearful that I overcompensate with my kids' childhood because I missed out on a lot of things like a mother's touch, really feeling connection, and also connecting in the sense of being present for my kids. I think a lot of times I kind of get frozen out of fear of doing something wrong because they don't really give you like a handbook with parenting, and I feel like it makes it really difficult, especially because my kids are just themselves and they have their own ideas, and that is totally fine. I try to be really respectful, and obviously we have rules and we have guidelines of how things are at home too, but we do believe in allowing our kids to express themselves because I personally feel like if you're more letting the kids be kids, your kids will trust you more, and that way the kids can grow up trusting me instead of being afraid of me. And that is something that I want, because as a kid growing up in my mom's home, in my birth mom's home, I was always afraid of being criticized, of being judged, or being pushed and punished and abused. For example, there was a time where I wanted to go to school and she said I couldn't, and I ended up going to school anyways, and then I came home and she locked me up in a closet. I was punished for trying to get an education. Always have been passionate about getting more educated and learning more, and I didn't feel like being punished for that was valid. And there's other situations where if I like had a small outburst or something, I would get punished for that by having my knees placed on salt. Like I would have to kneel on the salt or the rice. And of course those are awful, and I will never do that for my children. We do a little thing called like, okay, well, you need to take a minute in your room, like however old you are, just take like 3 minutes, just go sit down, just breathe, and then when you're ready you can come out and we can talk, because I'm working on having a home where the peace exists. I don't like being in situations where there's a lot of yelling, screaming, like a lot of anger. I don't like contention. It really affects me and it makes me want to be more contentious, and that's just something I'm trying to cut out of our lives. And I feel like we've been doing really good with it so far. And our kids have the harmony in our home is so much louder than the contention, and which I love. But think the fact that I didn't have a mother growing up from the ages of like basically 1 to 7 or 8 made it really hard for me as an adult, because I didn't have that connection. I see moms always talking about how connected they feel to their kids after their kids are born or during their pregnancies, and I have to admit, and I hope this comes off the right way, I never really felt that connection when I was pregnant. For me, it kind of felt, I love being pregnant. Like, pregnancy was my favorite part of being a mom. But I just didn't feel that strong connection to my kids. And when my son was born, I had a hard time connecting with him too, because I had a C-section and I didn't get to spend the first hour with him. And there's just a lot of missing links, and I have a really hard time connecting to him. And with my daughter, I had that golden hour, and I still didn't feel like super connected to her. And it's still, you know, for me, it's just like, is this safe? Is this mine? Do I get to keep this? I think that's where that disconnection has happened, because a lot of things in my life were ripped away from me as a kid. I had no stability growing up. I didn't have support. I didn't have any of those things. And so as a parent myself, I am working really hard day by day to establish those connections with my kiddos. My daughter is attached to me, hip attached, like she's next to me 24/7, sleeps next to me, breathes the same air as me. I sit down on the ground, she's right between my legs. I go do anything, she follows me into that room. I go to the bathroom, she's there. She wants me to hold her while I go to the bathroom sometimes, and I'm just like, I love you, I really do, but I cannot hold you 24/7. She's 16 months, and I try really hard to still help her feel like I'm her safe space. But obviously, there are times where it's better not to hold her, especially when I'm cutting something or if I'm cooking something hot. I just really don't want her to get injured. And with my son, he's by me also, and he comes to me anytime he's feeling sad. If he's got a scary dream or something, he's always coming to me, which I have loved that connection with my kids. But I'll be honest, I wish I had that connection with my mom from the get-go, so then I didn't have to compensate for it in my adult life. I hope that makes sense. All in all, I will say that because of my trauma and because of my trust issues, I am attached to my husband 24/7. I've become his attached child in a way. Not trying to say this in the wrong, but trying to say that I want to be with my husband all the time because he's my stability. He is the constant that I needed in my life. He is always home when he needs to be home. He comes home after work and gives me kisses and loves me. And he's loved me no matter what kind of outbursts I have emotionally. And so, is it difficult to parent as an adoptive mom, as an adopted girl, woman? Yes, it is. Because you don't want to have that effect on your kids where there's a disconnection. I don't. I personally know that there's a lot of other women out there who were adopted who have the same disconnection issues as I do, because you just want to establish a good solid foundation with your kids, and you want them to feel like you are their safe space. And that is all I have ever wanted for my kids, and I hope that is what I continue to be for them, because that's just something we both need. And the feeling of, is this really mine? Do I actually get to keep this? Comes from the fact that in the orphanage, nothing ever really was mine. I didn't have things that belonged to me. There would be families that would bring us stuff, and that's when stuff started becoming mine. But majority of the stuff that I had, like coats, shoes, jackets, clothes, were coming handed down from all the other kids before me. The kids that were the same size as me at the age that they were. And nothing ever truly was mine. And so having this connection with my kids and making sure that they're actually here to stay and that they're actually here with me is just so important, because obviously I don't want to be an overly attached, overly protective mom to the point where I do drive my kids away, but I want to be that safe space, so then they don't have that missing piece of life where they're like, is this really mine? Do I actually get to keep this type of situation? I know that for me also personally, I when I went through my miscarriages, it actually started creating a lot of, in a sense, a lot of issues for me as well, with trusting that the next baby that I'm pregnant with would be mine. And it actually created a lot of trauma for me, because I wanted to make sure that the baby that I was carrying was actually with me, and I wouldn't connect for a while, like until they were born. Basically, I wouldn't really connect with the baby, with my kids. And so in that regard, my husband and I've talked about it, and a lot of our fears come from the fact of, what if the next baby that we end up being pregnant with, we don't get to keep, because that's just been how it's been. We get pregnant and then we miscarry, and then the next pregnancy is a healthy pregnancy, you know, and there's a lot of trying in that point. And so it creates a lot of trust issues, definitely being a mom that's adopted too, because I just really don't want to lose out on that hope or chance of bringing another little human into this world. And so all in all, being adopted is a blessing, but it's also really, really difficult. So if you guys have any questions about being adopted or have your own adoptive stories, please comment them. I would love to get connected with you. Or if you'd like to send me your story, I would love to read it and share it with my viewers. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know this one was a short one, but I've got a couple of episodes coming up for you guys that are going to be a little bit more in depth with other adoptees. And please make sure to subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you so much for tuning in. And make sure to follow and share, guys. The more shares that we get, the more stories and more people we can reach. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.